Welcome back to the Automation Podcast and happy Thanksgiving week, everyone. My name is Shawn from Insights in Automation, and this week we're doing something a little bit different. I invited John Gardner back on. He's from CNC Broach Tool and Manufacturer Local, and I invited him back on to share some of his inspirational manufacturing art and just to talk about manufacturing in general. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I want to again wish you a very happy Thanksgiving week. John, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast, or I should say coming back on the Automation Podcast. I've been looking forward to this. For the audience who doesn't know, I reached out to John a few weeks ago to get him back on for a Thanksgiving week special. Thanksgiving week, we always have a lot of other things on our mind than work typically. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to get John back on and look at some of the great art he has, manufacturing art, and also talk about like manufacturing know-how. So first, though, before we get into any of that, please tell people a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, Shawn, thanks for having me back on. I had so much fun with you last time talking about automation, the manufacturing and industry in general. Insights in automation is something I'm very passionate about. I always try to keep an eye on what you have going on. I've been in the manufacturing industry since I feel like I was born into it, watching my dad over his drafting table as a kid in the 80s. And then I was working for him grinding carbide inserts in the early 90s as a 12-year-old on an old World War II era grinder that my dad had in the garage because he was selling his patented form tools for screw machines. And as a kid, I'd make a lot of money grinding inserts for him. And then, I started my own business in the industry when I was 25. With a patented cutting tool is how I pay my bills now. And over the years, I've really just gained such an appreciation for the industry itself. And I really it's really in my heart to enlighten those who are not in the industry as to the importance of the industry in their day-to-day life as Americans or any free nation. The defense industrial base, you cannot have a affordable defensive industrial base unless you have a strong commercial industrial base. They're tied inexplicably. They're totally tied together. And I feel a lot of people have lost sight over that and just sought cheap goods. And so I think it starts with the education and the passion. And so I always kind of have collected some manufacturing art back from the bygone years, and manufacturing was honored. And this industry was really looked at as it should be, as a path to the middle class. Manufacturing jobs are considered, higher earning jobs. 60% of Americans don't have college degrees, and the manufacturing industry has been a traditional path to the middle class for people, even if you don't have a college degree. And it kind of broke my heart recently when a report came out that manufacturing employment in America is at an all-time low, about 12.8 million. I remember in 2014, it was about 14 million. And so it's actually shrinking. Now, automation has something to do with it, but I also think that so many people don't even know it's a career path. I really, here, I'll just jump in and show you some of the stuff I have. Sure. I think one of the ones that really resonate with me the most is this one here. It's from a Republic Steel, and this is actually a page from a magazine, I believe in the 30s or 40s. And it's called "Meet This Man of Steel." You can see just how the art depicts him as kind of like a proud guy doing a good job. And what I love about this is they write up in here. And if we have the time, I'd like to read it because it shows Republic Steel educating the public about the benefits of this industry. It says, perhaps you already know him. He works for Republic. He is typical of 52,000 other men of steel employed in the 61 efficient plants that Republic operates in 41 different cities. Imagine it, jobs in 41 cities. These men with their families would make up a city of 200,000 people. Their individual purchases of food, clothing, shelter, automobiles, gasoline, furniture, and radios, washing machines, vacuum cleaners help to support thousands of butchers, bakers, groceries, clothiers, and other merchants in their respective communities. Everything in the way of new equipment and raw material that Republic buys, and every ton of steel that Republic men produce, help make jobs for other men in other scores of other lines of work. Republic is an important national industry. This man of steel is an important citizen. And I love that, how they show how, his ability to create something, supports all these other industries. And that ties in with something that I feel is not talked about enough. Manufactured goods are 80% of the global economy. Service economy is only 20%. So, if you tell somebody who doesn't know anything about our industry, say somebody that works at Starbucks, and you say, hey, listen, the importance of manufacturing to America and a nation that wants to have a strong economy and be able to produce affordable goods for their defense industrial base, right? You take a house, right? Look at the services that go into a house and look at the manufactured goods that go into a house. The manufactured goods, you have all the screws and the bolts and the nails and the wood and the machinery to cut the wood and the machinery to create the concrete, the machinery to create the hand tools. All these manufactured goods create enormous economy. The service side of a house is minimal. It's the realtor, the title company, and the banks. A much smaller piece of the pie. And that's why when a nation embraces manufactured goods as their core economy, they produce more jobs. And as I said earlier, those jobs tend to be the path to the middle class because they're higher earning jobs compared to others. So back to the art, and just jump in and cut me off because I'll talk your ear off. So some of the other things that, like, this is another, Uncle Sam pushes puts his shoulder to the wheel of progress. And I love the detail in here where you can see, the metropolitan city right here. And what I love about this is it shows, Uncle Sam puts a shoulder to the wheel of progress. And yes, this was during the war years, and there was a lot of work hard in the manufacturing industry to, beat the Axis and stuff. But I think it just shows that if you, put in a hard day's work, in this industry, you'll go home and have the ability to supply a middle-class life for your families, and I would say that's, the only people that I don't see doing that in the manufacturing industry are those who don't want to learn anything else. They learn one machine and they want to just sit there and do the same thing every day and be done. And their pay generally doesn't go up. But I know so many people that they learn one machine and they learn another machine and they know 5 machines. And they want to learn the engineering behind the machines. And they're constantly growing their ability to earn more money because their skill set grows. And I find that to be very exciting, because to be able to just get that opportunity in another industry, you have to have a college degree, and then you have to intern. And there's all these steps where in the manufacturing industry, you can just jump in at 18 years old and start learning skill sets. This artwork right here was created. My uncle told me about how this artwork was created. And he was an artist back in the 60s and 70s before computer graphics were done. And he said they would use really fine ink and mark each line. And that's why all that detail is there. Anyway, so I believe this one is from I think this one's from the 20s or 30s, maybe the 40s. But a few of the other ones here is, where accuracy meets precision. Now look at that. Now that was actually back when the industry was probably a little bit more dirtier than it is now. Now everything's in a clean room with air conditioning, and the industry is so much cleaner than it used to be. But even then, they show kind of pride for the industry, and this is South Bend Lathe Works, building their machines. Now, I think of all the money that goes into marketing, like from the government, federally funded marketing for COVID shots, or that goes to pay money to the pharmaceutical industry, or all the money that goes in to pay for all the different marketing things. I think we paid $29 million for Pakistan, the market, gender ideology or something. Why isn't the federal government putting money into marketing this great industry, which provides great American jobs, keeps our national security safe by having affordable national, defense goods, lowers the cost of goods for Americans by producing stuff here and building up an industrial base here? I'd like to see the government incentivize younger people to get in this industry. I'll go through some more stuff, and if I'm going too fast, I love this one here. You know, I just love anything that shows attention to detail. You got your micrometer here. Before they had digital micrometers, and they just talk about. Um, I just love the imagery showing precision, attention to detail, taking your time to make sure something's right. There's a pride that comes with being in the manufacturing industry and creating parts. I kind of always looked at it as being a jeweler, right? Each part I make needed to be looked at. I might be making 100 parts, 100 carbide inserts, but each one needed to get my attention as if it was a piece of jewelry. And that's the sort of tolerances we hold in this industry, you know? So I think you have to have somebody in that industry, and it can be taught. Somebody that wants to take pride in the work that they do. I remember the first time I ground some inserts for my dad on that old World War II grinder, and he wanted me to hold a thousandth of an inch tolerance, which is, very, I don't know what, 100 times less than a human hair. It's very small, right? And I remember the very first insert that I did that he mic'd out with a micrometer like that. And the look of disgust that came on his face, and he's like, yeah, and he like threw it against the wall. And he's like, that's junk. And I obviously, as a 12-year-old, I was just mortified, and he's like, it has to be right. It has to be right, because you can't send this to somebody. And he explained to me that they're making all these other parts with it. And if I'm not right, they're going to make a whole bunch of parts wrong because they're relying on me. He's like, then that goes down the chain and everybody wastes money. And it really, if he hadn't explained it to me, I wouldn't have known it. And I think that young people in this industry need those mentors to kind of like explain to them, hey, this is why this is important. This is why you approach it mentally this way, and that's what that art does for me. It brings up these very, feelings of like how the industry is and used to be exemplified in the marketing, but it's really not shown that way anymore, and I really like to kind of bring back that passion for it. A couple more art pieces if we have the time.
Absolutely, please.
Shawn, let me give you a chance to jump in here. I'm totally steamrolling you.
No, I mean, so much of what you covered. I think really where we are today is we are at the end of a marketing campaign. I harken back to some of these shows that have talked about the cigarette industry and how they were hiring their own scientists to say they were healthy and hiring actors to look all buff and and of course now we know that cigarettes are not healthy for you. They're actually pretty bad. They're addictive. I know it was very hard for me to quit. Thank goodness I've been quit for now 20, 30 years. But
Congratulations.
yeah, no, but it's such a hard thing. But there was this marketing campaign, big money, big tobacco, right? And if anybody who's very young and they don't believe me or don't understand what I'm saying, go back and look at it. There's all kinds of documentaries on it. And it was, you know, it was basically corporations wanted to make money, so they found the right scientists and the right actors to promote their product. And I think that marketing campaign, we can see a lot of that in everything we look at today. For instance, a lot of people think that automation automatically reduces the number of jobs. But if we take a case study like ATM machines, so I remember when ATM machines became popular and everybody was saying, oh, this is going to get rid of all the teller jobs. There are actually more tellers per capita now than they were then because now they're doing more productive, more profitable jobs. Before, they were just counting out and handing out money. That's kind of a boring job. I've done piecework, very boring, right? And doing that type of job is very boring. I worked on a cash register during holidays when I was a teenager. Very, very boring job. Not that it is for everybody, but for a majority of people, I think they'll find that boring. And so tellers today, they do a lot more. They open up accounts, they do cashier's checks, they do a much wider range of things than just allow you to either put money in or take money out of the account. You can do that with the teller, with the ATM now. And I agree. Like recently we covered on a morning show, ISA came out and said, you know, people in automation is important, and automation does not reduce the amount of jobs. It elevates the jobs, right? So we think of every like we think of like every new invention that comes out, it typically doesn't eliminate a bunch of jobs. It
Right.
makes them, it elevates them. Now I know people will come out and they'll say, well, what about this or what about that? But if you look broadly overall, automation elevates jobs. And, I just want to go back to like, I do have relatives. My wife is a principal, and I have relatives who have never been into manufacturing, right? And they'll say things like everything's made in China. Well, that's not true.
Not true.
Having been somebody who went out and visited plants, I can point out all the manufacturing plants in the town, right? And so that's not true. Number two, things are made in China because it's too expensive to make here. Not true. Most of the products that were moved to China or are made in China are, and I probably shouldn't pick on China, but moved overseas, right? They're done to increase profits, not to bring us a lower cost product, right? And a lot of times, the reason why stuff that's still made here, if you have a novelty item that's still made here, maybe it's a fancy sneaker or something else, the reason that's more expensive is because that's just low volume, right?
Low 100%. 100%. Yeah. If
And
you,
it's not free trade. That's the other thing is we talk about free trade, but there's a lot of unfair trade going on in the world. And I really love your manufacturer local, pushes, and because I personally think everything should be made local if you can. Like if you have cars, they should, look at all the car companies that have built factories in America to make cars locally, right? And we should be doing the same thing. I mean, we want all our car manufacturers to be building their cars locally. It comes back to what you said originally. You need to have the jobs locally to have customers to buy your products. If you have no jobs, you have no customers. And so a lot of these corporations, they're after that quick kill, they're after that quick buck. They want to make their
export,
millions and retire and not, but we all know every company is a three-legged stool. It's not just making, money back for your shareholder. That's not the end all be all of life. It's being a productive, positive part of society and providing a good place to work. And that's what a company's responsibility in our society is. It's not all about just making quick cash. That if you want to make quick cash, go to a casino. When we need companies, like I see a lot of companies a lot of countries get devastated when imports just flood into their market and all the local businesses. I mean, we can see case study after case study after case study, especially smaller countries where the entire industry is devastated because of imports. What good does that do anybody except make some fat cat and some high rise rich? It doesn't do anything for anybody.
as America, I've said this several times, and is that it's a proven fact that America's middle class. It was I got the data off I think the census website, that
Mhm.
America's middle class is at its lowest share of Americans in history. I think as of 2015, our middle class is dramatically shrinking, and as the middle class shrinks and the lower income class expands and the upper class expands, that kind of golden goose of purchasing power, how we were the world's greatest consumer model, how we had the largest purchasing power of any nation, that was because we had the greatest middle class in the history of the world. And that is being killed. That golden goose is being killed. And I think you're spot on that when we bring manufacturing back here, it will get cheaper because of economy of scale, and larger production volumes will allow that per item good to come down when compared to foreign imports. But it won't. We won't have people that can afford to buy cars without if we continue to shrink and attack the middle class. And I think the fastest way to build up the middle class is to build up the manufacturing industry.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm going to just jump in here just to finish that analogy about a marketing campaign,
Yeah.
and then I'll turn it back to you. I think we're at the end of that campaign where people are starting to say, this is all lies. So if we look at Post Malone, right? So I don't follow him, but when I saw his transformation for just giving up soda, like the transformation, he just lost a ton of weight from one thing, giving up soda. It's
Yeah.
like, bing. It's like, why do so many people who move here from Europe put on 40 pounds? And then when
Yeah.
they go back to Europe, lose to 40 pounds. And you
Yeah.
can find story after story after story about that. We've been marketed to the nth degree. We've been all sold a bit of goods like cigarettes are healthy and they make you macho. Well, that's happened in our entire, like, you want the lowest price you can get. Well, how many times have you gone to the store, bought the cheapest item because you thought you were saving money, and then it breaks at an inopportune time, and you end up having to buy the more expensive unit, and now you're out a lot more money than you saved.
Yep.
I know it's happened to me a lot of times.
A lot.
So it's time. I think it's time for us, just as human beings, to say, we gotta these commercials, this marketing campaign against us to enrich a few people at the top. I mean, they know their stuff. They can make their food taste so good that you're dying to eat it. But then, like, if you ever watch the documentary Super Size Me,
Yeah.
we can relate with the fact what happens on the other side of that hill, right? So I think it's time for us to break through the marketing and start looking at reality and saying, what do I want for my future? What do I want for my kids' future? What do I
Yeah.
want for my country's future? And there is enough manufacturing to go around. There's
I think,
enough
sorry,
manufacturing to go around. No, go ahead. No, please.
I think there's a bunch of great stuff you said there, but I think honing in on, you talk about how the big corporations are the ones controlling marketing, and that's 100% true. And I completely agree that they're almost doing like a psyops campaign, and you don't see positive imagery out there about the manufacturing industry and the general public. But I think, I'm a big fan of keeping the federal government out of private business, but I think the manufacturing industry needs to be an exception. I think the federal government needs to run a national manufacturing campaign because it's so tied to the defense industrial base. It is so tied to national security. The ability to produce goods here, there's economic security. There's, being able to manufacture your own parts for your jets. I think that it goes above the level of just having the big corporations honor manufacturing and doing it here. I think the federal government needs to incentivize people to get in this industry because it's shrinking and it's dying as those skill sets die. Before I go back to the manufacturer, I just love what you said about automation because I'm so of the same opinion. I'm automating and vertically integrating my shop. And we are able to run lights out now all night long with nobody there. But I'm actually hiring more people because I can do more and provide a cheaper good now to my clients and a faster good. Before the lead time was like 2 to 3 weeks. Now I can turn around in a couple days. And so I hired another person, and their skill sets are a little bit more advanced than the people I would have had before them. Because but the thing is, I just have the guy above them train them, and you don't have to go. They don't have to go get a college degree to learn how to run these setups, and to be able to do to automate these all night long, So I think that is really. I want to hear more about that. I love that take, and I really believe in it because I'm experiencing it myself. I think automation is an opportunity to provide cheaper goods and economy of scale to Americans, blow away that whole misconception that American goods are more expensive. I think it provides more skilled labor. And I think it really what it does is reduces the amount of like white collar dum-dum jobs. They talk about AI and how AI is going to put everybody out of business. I guarantee AI, robotics, you can't set up my fixturing. I can take pallets and put in my product and make 5 pallets. And a robot can change those pallets in. But to set them up originally, I mean, there's human interaction there. I think AI is going to do away with a lot of white collar jobs more than the blue collar jobs. You're not going to be able to AI out a electrician or a plumber. You're just not. But I like that take. I think that's a material for a whole episode about automation and how it's actually. I think that's somewhere a thread we should follow, Shawn.
And I'm just going to jump in here. We follow the Association for Advancing Automation, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and other places like that on the morning show. And they constantly bring up something that I think you and I are experiencing now too. The younger generation, like my grandkids grew up with touchscreens, right? They're teenagers now in high school, but they grew up with touchscreens. They never knew a life without touchscreens.
Yeah.
And so they, if you want to be able to attract the younger people to work for you, you can't have a system designed in the 50s or 60s. You're not going to be able to keep them on board. And so it's like this forcing mechanism. You're either growing or you're dying, right? I mean, that's it. Everything in life.
To your point, I hired this 21-year-old guy at my shop, And on the brand new machine we just got, he's so excited to run. He's like, this is like running a spaceship. And, I mean, it is, you know these machines these days. He's like,
Yep.
and he's so excited because it's cool. Now, if I put him on some older piece of machinery from the 60s or 70s, I doubt he would have that same enthusiasm, you know? So I got him the best equipment, you know, I got him the best, you know, but it also incentivized him because he feels he's doing something cutting edge, which he is, you know?
Yeah.
So that is a very true statement you said.
No pun intended, cutting edge.
Yeah, no pun intended. Okay, so some more manufacturing. I got a few more pieces to show you. This is one of my favorites because it probably makes me feel nostalgic for my view of my grandparents and my dad. You know, the manufacturing industry is not this way anymore, and it will probably never be. But this image just has that. I'll be honest. I think people view the manufacturing industry still as how this image is, but it is not anymore. And I'll explain once I show it to you. So I love the colors here. You can tell this was hand painted. And you got all the people coming out of the factory after a long, hard day's work, you know, and this is a Republic Steel. All kinds of people work for Republic, you know, and they talk about nearly 60,000 men and women are working today in 76 plants, mines, warehouses, and sales office. They represent a true cross-section of this America of ours, of the mixture of all kinds of people, which has made this country the most powerful and prosperous on earth. These people possess a bewildering variety of specialized skills. Among them are blowers, melters, rollers, welders, ladle cranesmen, clerks, stenographers. There are miners, meteorologists, chemists, accountants, engineers, designers. Republic employs printers, nurses, farmers, painters, carpenters, and men and women in many trade and occupations. Now I could go on and read more about this, but you know, last thing, only in America, land of free enterprise and free opportunity, could such an organization take root and grow and flourish. And the best guarantee of our country's future greatness will be to continue those freedoms so that every American who wants to get ahead will find full reward for his ability and effort. Now, for a Thanksgiving Day episode, I just want to give thanks for the manufacturing industry. And this has proved true in my life. And I think the opportunity that I found in my own life is getting a more narrow window. It's so hard to start a business in the manufacturing industry on your own with a specialized product like I have. Now, it's easier if you're doing general job shop stuff, but I just have so much thanks and gratitude for being able to provide for my family. And it's this industry in America that has given me, has presented that to me. You know, and I hear that echoed in this, you know, and now what I meant when I said that, you know, the industry used to be thought of in this way, you know, a dirty factory and a bunch of people coming out at the end of the day. But that is not the case anymore. Now, you know, 75% of the manufacturing industry is 20 employees or less. That's mind-boggling. 20 employees or less. It's really small businesses, and they're job shops. Sadly, the people hurt most by this exodus of the big cities and the big factories, which are depicted here in that mindset, are minorities. Chicago, Detroit, New York, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, St. Louis, all manufacturing got sick of all the unions and all this, and they left those cities. And they moved a lot of their manufacturing overseas. And what they did move overseas, people took out into the countryside and they built a shop and got some machines and keep it small so the unions don't mess with them. And I call the unions the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there are good aspects to them. I mean, we don't have child labor anymore. We have, days off. I mean, they did a lot of good stuff in the early days. But it is an indisputable fact that manufacturing left these great cities, and and the unions played a part in that. And that's fodder for a whole nother episode, because I think they do good stuff. But back to why the industry is not this way anymore, is that 75% of the industry is 20 employees or less, and 90% of the industry is 500 employees or less. And the Small Business Association, SBA, categorizes small business as anyone under 500 employees, which I think is an erroneous calculation. 500 employees is not small business. But my point is, manufacturing is small business. It's not the monolithic factories anymore. Manufacturing has become decentralized in America. It is manufactured local in America, with these machine shops spread all over the nation instead of kind of conglomerates in the main cities, where with CNC lathes, I know so many of my clients, a lot of them are guys that, oh yeah, I got a shop on my property and I bought some machines and I do overflow work at night that my own company wants. And then they sent me to another company and now I started my own shop, and it's kind of the guys out in the countryside with the space to do it, that are really becoming the decentralized manufacturing. And now this is another beautiful piece of artwork. I love this. Just look at that painting, I mean, isn't that gorgeous?
It is.
I mean, it's just hand painted. The colors are so vibrant. You can tell some computer didn't render it. It's baptism of fire. It's Torrington needle bearings, and what they talk about, it just shows the pride and attention. Look how focused these guys are,
Yep.
look at their faces, this guy right here, they're focused. Now, of course, this is glamorized a little bit, of course, but these people did a good job. And back then you could have one parent in the workforce. You could afford a house and a car or two, and the other parent could stay at home. That's not really a possibility in today's America, because all these service jobs took over and they don't pay their salary. Their average salary is so much lower that now people are forced to have a second parent in the work home, and the kids and the family unit is structuring. And the family unit is something I think is so important to me. And you used to be able to support your family with a job in the manufacturing industry, whether you had a college degree or not. A lot of those guys coming back from World War II did not have college degrees, and they joined the industry and they worked 30 years and they had pensions, and that doesn't exist anymore. And there's a lot of things that can be done to bring that back. Two more pieces of art, unless I can give you a chance to respond if you wanted to.
No, I'm just thinking of all the openings in the trades that that can't be filled, like welders and other trades. We see South Dakota advertising here in Massachusetts for welders and other tradesmen. There are plenty of trades jobs out there. Maybe not manufacturing, although I do think there are a lot out there. But there's a lot of trades jobs out there, and I just think. Again, part of the marketing campaign, and I fell for this too. You got to go to school for 4 years. I told my children, you should really get a college degree. Go to school for 4 years. Have that degree for life. And in most cases, I think maybe not a majority, but maybe a majority of the young people don't need to go to college. They should go to a trade school. You don't need to go to get a 4-year degree to be an awesome programmer or an awesome designer. I mean, there's a lot of options out there. If you want to be the best mechanic, you can take a 1-year course and come out of there with everything you'll ever need to know to fix any car on the market.
Yeah.
And so I just think trades today, if any youngsters are listening, or if you have a youngster in your life that you want to get into IT, you do not need a 4-year degree to get into IT or into programming or into welding or a lot of these things. Trades are dying for. They're really looking for people right now.
For young people that are eager to learn and have attention to detail.
Yeah.
That's looking for somebody. They don't want somebody to show up and I want a job. They want somebody that shows up, looks you in the eye, pays attention to detail, and is willing to work hard and work their way up. You'll climb the ladder fast if you have that.
But we got to flip it over too, because the Peter principle is killing a lot of these open positions, because you have a lot of people who think they're hiring a slave. And this generation, they'll last a day or two. If you don't treat them with respect, they're gone. They're like, I'm nobody's slave. So I think that's an important thing too. We have to remember, when you're hiring somebody, when you're working with people, even if they're vendors or customers, everybody deserves to be treated with respect and decency, right? That's just part of being a human being, a good human being. And so a lot of the youngsters, I know, even my own kids, they went to a job for a week and they left because they were just treated like they were a slave. And you know what? There's no justification for that. It's not only that it's illegal to treat people poorly, but there's no justification for not being a good human being.
100%. I was going to say, as far as you're talking about the education, going to a trade school. Well, the young man I just hired, the Mitsubishi company trained him on my machine.
Nice.
The Keonce measuring, Keonce, they make measuring machines. They trained him on the Keonce comparator that I bought. So, I paid for his training, but he basically got he can now run, our Mitsubishi CNC, and I paid for the training, but he didn't have to go to a trade school to do it, now. And so it's amazing what you can learn if you just go into a company with an open mind, what they'll pay to train you at. And that's not, and you're getting paid while you do it. He was getting paid every day he was training. Where if he goes to college, he's paid, And that skill set that he learned, now he can put that on his resume for life. He knows how to run a Mitsubishi CNC. He knows how to run a Keon's comparator. Those are very, very valuable things to have on a resume. If I saw that on a resume, I'd be like, whoa, it'd make me key. Yeah, I'd key in on that. So beyond the trade schools, finding out which companies. My advice for a young person would be like, I want to join your company, but I want to learn as much as I can. A company owner, you perk up at that. Wow. And then if you're a young person, you ask a company owner, what will you train me in? Well, what will you train me in this? Will you train me in that? Look their company up and look at the machines they have, or look at what they do and say, hey, I want to learn X, Y, and Z. Will you train me in this? You're almost guaranteeing yourself paid college right there,
Well, and I don't know how many company owners I've met who have said, we're going to train you, but we're going to pay you less than what the going rate is. And like, how dumb can you be? It's like, that guy's going to leave after he gets his training. If you can't pay, you got to pay competitive wages. If you're going to train somebody, I mean, remember, they're stretching themselves too. It's not just you who are outlaying the money. They're stretching themselves to learn these new things. You got to pay competitive. You want to hold on to those people.
Yeah. I don't know any company that would, you hire somebody, they're getting paid while you train them. That I would hope that's the standard. But let me show you a couple more pieces of artwork.
Yeah, please.
This one is from Westinghouse, and it's it shows the engineers, and this one I like because it just shows that the manufacturing industry. I've focused a lot on the shop side of it because that's where I'm at. But there is a white collar side to the manufacturing industry. We all know the engineering. And I tend to leave it a little, not talk about as much because I'm more familiar with the shop side of it. And engineers, machinists and I always joke about how engineers these days, they don't have any shop experience. So they're always goofing up because the new crop of engineers they've never worked in a shop because they're not required to anymore. So they're constantly designing stuff that's very expensive to manufacture, and they don't know the parameters to design it for manufacturability, thus increasing the cost. Now, that's a very broad generalization, and I probably just pissed off a bunch of engineers. But the older school guys still know. The older school engineers still have that shop experience, and the younger ones will get it. But I like this because I just find it such a clean, artistic image of, a group of engineers working on a problem in a company. I just like it. And this is one of the ones I'm most proud of. And I have some others, but this one's really big. Now, this is a poster that actually hung in a steel mill in Kentucky during World War II in 1942-43 in a Republic steel mill in Kentucky. This was actually is an authentic, pulled off the wall. And I love it because it has so much heart and passion for the industry and for our country too, So this is it says to all industry, full steam, full speed ahead. It has Uncle Sam there putting a poster on the wall, and it says down here it says Production Drive Committee. Every day counts, and it was just that term, Production Drive Committee. Why doesn't our country have that now? Why don't we have a production? It's not, we had it during World War II, but we're in economic warfare right now. We're facing economic pirates like China and India, and India has enormous 50, 100, 150% tariffs on goods coming in that we try to send to their country, and we have 3.4% tariffs on the goods they send to us. We are faced with a quote I read is economic warfare is warfare by other means. I'm butchering the quote, but the economy is a national security concern, 100%. And to just during World War II to have a production drive committee, I think we need a production drive committee now on how to produce more in this country and how to bring back manufacturing in this country. So I love this poster because it's authentic. I need to get it framed. And just I love the passion of Uncle Sam, putting up this poster to all industry and labor. Uncle Sam never addresses industry and labor anymore, unless it's to kind of like placate them. But to me, it's the most important aspect of our country, because you can't make weapons, you can't make, goods or medicine if you don't have a manufacturing industry. It is the core of a nation, in my opinion. So, which brings me to a question I had for you, Shawn. And unless you want a minute to respond, I've been rambling here. So
No, I think of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So any extras out there may have listened to it or read it, but it reminds me of the story of the shoe salesman, and eventually they were so good at selling shoes and promoting shoes that everybody spent all their money on shoes, and the shoes would wear out after a week, and the whole economy of the planet collapsed because the marketing just pushed them so much. And I know this is very silly sci-fi, but you see that if the goal is for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper goods with no concern at all for does anybody have a job, right? You can see that whole thing tip over. And I think, just like people saw that cigarettes are not healthy, I think
right.
people are now seeing that this is kind of a snow job. We need to get back to what is right for our town, our state, our nation. And we don't just want this for us. We want this for we want Canada to be strong. We want Mexico to be strong. We want China and India and all those countries in Europe. We want everybody to be strong. Africa, we want everybody to be strong. We don't want anybody to be held hostage because something has to come across a border somewhere. And so, in any case, that was kind of my thought process. So I'll pitch it back to you.
No, I love that. I love that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's a great. I hadn't remembered that one. That's good. One forgotten ingredient that I talked to somebody is raw material for mining, and one of the reasons, other than cheap labor, probably a bigger reason than cheap labor, that people offshore, is their access to cheap raw materials. Because we have clamped down on mining so much in America to placate the environmental movement, and without taking into consideration that the technologies for clean mining have grown so much. And so when you have in Malaysia a manufacturing company that can get the cheapest of cheap raw materials and slave labor or cheap labor, I mean, how can American companies compete? So I think along with the manufacture local is mine local. And you want to do it a clean way, but you have to have raw materials. If you want to have a nation, if you want to have people have goods, you have to have raw material.
I was just talking about this on the morning show, and we were talking about batteries. I'm a big proponent of batteries made out of earth abundant materials, because if you can mine it anywhere, you can build it anywhere. And yes, every region in the world should be making their own batteries. I mean, they can all be of the same design, but we need to put the people who are using the batteries to work so they can buy the batteries. And I want to throw one thing out there too for the audience to think about. Why do we force local companies to use clean power, right? Even our coal plants are clean, right? But yet that same company who's making those products using clean power, they can save 50% by just going 1 mile down the road across the border and use it making dirty power. As a matter of fact, there's more dirty power being built in these third world countries than exist on the planet today. In construction now is more dirty power plants being made right now than exist on the planet today. Why do our laws say if you make it here, you have to use clean power, but if you make it somewhere else, we're going to close our eyes and we don't care what you do? Shouldn't it be that if you want to sell something here, make or sell something here, you have to meet our laws? Like if we have these, whether it's OSHA or EPA, or those should apply to not only what's made here, but what's sold here. I think that would clean up a lot of the problems. But back to you. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I love that. I think if how fast would jobs come back to America if corporations had to have the same OSHA laws, the same unions, the same laws that we have to follow here? There would be a flood of jobs coming back. And how do you balance that without enforcing laws in other countries? Tariffs. I'm so pro tariff. So you can't enforce laws in Malaysia to force them to have clean mining. You can't enforce them to use, I'm picking on Malaysia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, communist China, whatever. we can't force these other nations to adopt our labor laws and allow our unions to infiltrate their companies. But how you can balance it out to promote American trade and American companies that are made in America is tariffs, because then the cost break isn't there, and then companies will move back here to work around the tariff. You know,
But tariffs are important, but think about toys, right? So it's illegal to sell a toy here that has lead paint. Okay. Now, you can make the toy any way you want, but you just can't sell it here if it has lead paint. So I think there is a way to do this where what is sold here has to meet our requirements, just
I
like
love.
you can't have no lead. But let me say one other thing too. Why am I paying the inspectors at the docks to inspect that? I don't care where the product comes from, right? Well, I actually do, but let's say I'm an agnostic. Shouldn't the importer have to pay every fee to inspect every toy? Shouldn't there be like tons of inspectors on the docks inspecting at random different parts coming in to make sure that, like, the dog food's not poisoned or the sheetrock doesn't outgas and harmful chemicals? I mean, why should I don't want to pay that. Look, all dock security, all that should be paid by the importers. If they want to import something, they have to pay a fee, right? Wouldn't you? If you're going through customs, you have to pay a customs fee. Well, they should be covering all costs, not just some paperwork costs. They should be covering all the inspectors and all of that to make sure. They should be covering the inspectors that have to go out to their plant to make sure they're not using dirty coal plants, they're using clean power. If it's required here, it should be required for any product that's brought in. But back to you.
I just love that. I love that idea of having. Well, you just can't even sell your good here if it's made it to not. Yeah, I like that. The tariffs would address the cost of the customs and border enforcement. And, tariffs were used to fund the federal government for 147 years before we introduced income tax and started targeting Americans to fund the government. Income tax didn't exist. Tariffs were how, we had an average tariff rate of 40 to 60%, and the federal government was just fine. But beyond tariffs, I love your idea of saying, hey, you just can't even sell it here if you have lead paint, or you just can't even sell it here if you don't have a union like the car
Or
maker.
follow OSHA. If you don't follow OSHA standards, if you're forcing your people to work 80 hours a week, you're forcing them to, not voluntary.
Can't even sell here. I love that approach, Shawn. I think that's some wisdom there. One other thing you said about talking about going across the city line or the state line to get non-clean power. I've talked about the federal government and their responsibility for national security, because that is the number one mandate of the Constitution for the federal government. It's not to target you for income tax and to do everything. It's to provide security for the nation. Beyond that, I've talked about the federal government promoting manufacturing in America. But bringing it down another level, like you've talked about, the states and the cities have so much power. A couple states that are very manufacturing friendly are Florida and Arizona. And my shop's actually in Arizona. I live in California and I have an office here, but my shop is in Arizona. They're a very manufacturing friendly state. And they, there's so much power that cities have, cities, towns, and states have, that if they believe in this, that they can incentivize manufacturing. And I encourage, everybody's always just looking to the federal government for help, but I believe states and cities can dramatically embrace the manufacturer local philosophy as well.
Yeah, and I want to, for anybody who thinks that that's not possible, think about all the cities and towns that eliminated plastic shopping bags or plastic straws, right? Look,
Yeah.
we all lived through that, right? And so, I mean, we, with the pandemic and everything, a lot of that's come back. But cities and towns and states, they have a lot of power to do that. And the other thing, I want to throw out there too is, and I know we're not talking about taxes right now, but just on your point, if we look at the airwaves, the roadways that are carrying all this media, we know media is a big business. We know that, television streaming companies and all this stuff, these stars are making millions and millions of dollars. Athletes are making millions of dollars from advertising, but yet the cost to access the public, the US public, is almost zero. Big mistake our government made many years ago. With fees and tariffs, you could eliminate the income tax, and I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes right now. But think of it, right? Would you really cry if your favorite sports player, instead of making 100 million, only made 50 million? Think about it, right? we gave away the farm to big business. It's time for us to say, not only people who want to access our market, but also people in the market you need to pay to access the airwaves. You need to pay to pipe your signal down the road waves. I mean, those are the only two ways you're going to get to your customers, get to our homes, is either through the public airwaves, or through the public road waves with the easements on the phone lines and cables. So to me, it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like there should be, when you see all these people making just gobs of money and they're paying, what do they say? Somebody leaked the top 24 taxpayers in the US paid less than 1% in taxes because of all the loopholes.
Yeah.
If we could close some of these loopholes, we could have either zero or very low income tax
Are you
easily.
saying, are you saying, educate me here. You're saying that the phone lines and the airwaves and all that, they're almost nearly free,
Oh, yes.
and then they're sold to these big corporations who buy them and control them, and that there is then we see people making hundreds of millions of dollars off of advertising on them. You're saying that should do some public good. Is that what you're saying? Is that
I'm saying the public airways and the public byways should be, roadways should be, if leased at a regular,
yeah, they're paid for with taxpayer by dollars.
yeah, and protected by taxpayer dollars. They should be leased at a reasonable rate, not at practically for free.
I see.
I think we just have to get out of this marketing that, doing all this stuff for free. We kind of did it with the phone industry. We broke up Ma Bell. We broke up, into all the baby bells, and younger kids won't even remember that. But just to call my fiance, who's my wife now for 34 years, just to call her when we lived 10 miles apart, I mean, we were paying like $1 a minute. Right. So breaking that up and breaking those governmentally controlled things up is great, because now look how inexpensive, and look at the competition between cell phone companies and how much that has done to keep everybody competitive. Competition is
Yeah,
good. Fierce competition is good.
So cell phone prices are so much cheaper now. Like back from, when I got my first cell phone in '98, and it's so much cheaper. And so, I can talk as long as I want. It's unlimited minutes. And that's a good point. I think, again, I think state and locals could really, jump on that. Now, a question I had for you, Shawn, is,
Sure.
Kind of a nebulous or gray area topic that I don't think is ever talked about, because engineers and doctors and everybody likes things that they can define and put in a box and categorize and document and get, empirical data on, and then it's known. But there, to me, one of the biggest aspects of the manufacturing industry where actually you're crafting a part is manufacturing know-how. And, and they talk about, oh, well, when these companies move their manufacturing facilities from like Pittsburgh to China, well, that didn't happen overnight. That took years, right? Years. And as we're decoupling from China, and people are moving their manufacturing facilities back here, like, Intel and Taiwan Semiconductors trying to build a plant here in Phoenix. And then there's also, a lot of companies coming back. They're finding it's taken way longer than they thought, not just to build the facilities and move things back, but to train the staff and get them to know what they're doing. And this idea of manufacturing know-how, I wanted to ask what it meant to you, how to define it better, and the importance of it. And, for me, it's like the older machinist who knows how to set something up and square it off, and how to touch a cutting tool off and get square, and what to do when, why did this drill break, or why did this end mill crash, or why did this lathe crash, and how to troubleshoot those and find out. You can't learn that in any school in the world. You have to have the experience. You have to have the mentor showing you, and you also have to do it. For me, maybe manufacturing know-how is having guided experience. So a job shop gets a print and they have a job, and then something goes wrong on that job. And the only way that you learn is when you fix it, but you have to have a guy who knows a little bit more than you show you how to do it and find it. That has some aspect of manufacturing know-how for me that means, but I feel like it's such a broad topic that is completely undefined. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on it.
And I appreciate that. I think, I started ending the show with a new ending. During COVID, I changed it to, have a peaceful, have a healthy, and have a happy, because of everything that was going on. And I recently changed it to be courageous, be fearless, and have an awesome week or day, depending what show it is. And part of that is because that's what time it is. It's time to be courageous and fearless. Over the last few years, I've had several friends who quit their jobs because they were told you have to go overseas and get that plant up and running. People are moving equipment from here overseas, and they were courageous. They said, "Yeah, no, I don't. Guess what? I don't buy that. I'm not buying into the lie. I'm not buying into the lie. There are jobs out there. I don't know exactly where it is, but I'm going to find a good job. As a matter of fact, it'll probably be better than this one. But I am not going to train my replacements and facilitate your retirement by putting us out of business. You want to do that? You can. I don't have to be a part of it. Courageous and fearless. I don't know anybody who's a hard worker who was out of work for very long. And you know what? I think that sentiment's starting to come back. It's like, you know what? Like the old song, we don't have to take it, right? There are opportunities out there. And I think that's why you see, like you were talking about, and let's get in more into that. There are some smart people who are like, you know what, I can do this better. And they start the shop at night and then they start growing it. And now they get orders from all these places. And that's the human ingenuity. That's human, just wanting to do better, wanting to be productive, wanting to make a difference. And go ahead, could you comment on that?
My dad, I love that how they refuse to train their replacements. I love that. If you have know-how in an industry and they're going to struggle, don't train somebody overseas. Go start your own shop with that, or go tell your other employee about it. I love that. We'll have to pipe in some "We Don't Have to Take It" music, right now. But my dad still remembers some of his mentors. My dad started off I think on a lathe, maybe in a shop, in the 60s. And he then was in the Navy. And when he came back, he got a job in another shop, and he started talking, I believe, to the draftsmen, at the drafting table. He had a guy mentor him, and two guys there. And my dad still remembers their name. They passed away, I think, in the 80s. And they were older guys, and he still remembers how much they took time to show him and train him and teach him. And, that's manufacturing know-how passed on. I think it's generational. I think it is a heritage. I think manufacturing heritage and know-how, no corporation wants to acknowledge it. No corporation wants to understand that they're human, that the humans that they have for their company have this collective knowledge that has an undefined value that's actually a very high value, in my opinion. My dad still remembers one of his mentors, one of my mentors in industry he owns a machine shop, and he started off sweeping the floors in the 60s. Now he owns the shop, which employs about 50, 60 people, and he owns the land underneath it. And he worked his way up started off at 18 years old, sweeping the floor. And he has been so generous to me, a vendor of mine, working with me, keeping prices low, helping me with problems, giving me advice. And you could see how he honors he's getting a little older, and he has his protege, and his protege has the same things that he has, a patience, an understanding of my position as a business, with timing of tool deliveries, and the care for the people in his shop. He tried to sell his business, my mentor, Chuck, and he's in his mid 70s. And he realized that the new owner was going to just trash it and didn't care about the people. And he kept it. And he's like, John, I realize that I have 50 some odd families that rely on me to keep this business running. And I can't let it go until I know it's not going to go away if I let it go. And the integrity that took, and so he could have pieced out and moved to Vegas and, enjoyed his life. And so I think I'm kind of getting off topic here, but that know-how and that mentoring is not encouraged by big corporations. It's encouraged in the 20-man machine shops, but in the big corporations, it's kind of train your guy to punch the buttons on the machine. I see it. I deal with all these companies, and I see the difference in how they treat people. And I really encourage anybody that's watching this that has a big shop to encourage that mentoring and encourage that the teaching of knowledge, and to put value on it and show appreciation for it, for the people who do it, because it takes effort. It's easier to not care and not teach your knowledge. It's much easier. but it takes effort to do that. So it's just something I don't think is talked about enough. So.
Yeah, no, and I think there's two fake narratives that have been pushed on us. The old one was, well, you get paid for 40, but you got to work 80, right? Fake narrative. That's ridiculous. Absolutely. If you're the owner, you work as much as you want because you own it. And if you're passionate, you work, put in a lot of extra hours. But we got to treat our people well. I mean, I would people who worked for me, I would start telling them to get out of the office if they were working too late. It's like you can't do that. You have a life. You're gonna become estranged from your family. You're gonna miss all the important events. The other thing, though, on the other side is you that people are looking for a get rich quick scheme. It's like it's like as kids when the kids are all going to be pro ball players. The parents have to come in the room and say, "Look, 0.01% become pros." That cannot be the only thing that you can look at. And a lot of these smart ball players, they get degrees and really good stuff. Like some of them actually get doctorates and become, medical doctors right afterwards. So they know that it's not something you can typically do your entire life. You have to have a life after that. But for most, this lie that there's a quick rich that I'm going to be a streamer or a gamer or a football player. I mean, there is 0.01% of us that will become that, but most of us are going to have to, life is a journey. There is no, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket, I'm going to win the millions, and then I'm going to retire and sip drinks all day. Most of us, we have to just realize we are here, we are on a journey, and let's make the most out of it. Let's make it valuable. Let's not just always be trying to, get an extra buck here and there and an extra point of margin. And I've worked at places where there are some people who that's all they wanted to do is charge as much as they could. Gone was the idea of charging an honest rate for an honest service or product. It was like charge as much as you can. There is no price on the product. You try to, and I hate to say this, but it was really like, let's see who we can screw the most. That is really what their mentality was. And I think people are waking up and saying, look, there is such a thing as an honest price for an honest day's work, right? There is, some products are just worth X and some are not, right? And we're not all going to be famous children of famous people and be able to sell paintings for millions of dollars to unknown people. We have to work. We have a life to live. We have a community to support, and we got to get rid of these marketing. We've had a number done on us over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it's time for us to see through it and say, hey, all those lies.
Quick business. I know we're running short on time, but one of the
please.
business models in the manufacturing industry that I find egregious is the distributor middleman business model. Like the companies like Fastenal or MSC Industrial Supply, these middlemen, and I don't sell through distributors unless a company requests it, but I've found distributors would take my product and mark it up 300, 400%. And this was after my marketing found somebody. That client requested my cutting tool. This person basically was a purchasing agent, and they'll mark it up 300%, as much as they could get away with. Exactly. And so I just stopped selling through distributors. And that's what middlemen do is they, now I tell people, hey, you can buy direct from me, but if you want to outsource your purchasing department, you pay for that. I'm not going to give them a discount. And distributors get mad and say, oh, we're not going to market your product. I'm like, your marketing doesn't get me any clients. My own marketing gets me clients. But just how they like get every buck you can. These middlemen, typical large portion of distributors are not providing much value in far as they're just basically like provide, they're a purchasing agent, which a company wants to outsource that so they don't have to pay pension and healthcare to an employee for purchasing. I really appreciate you, have me on Thanksgiving. I just want to say, I guess we both should say what we're thankful for. I'm thankful, like for I said, the manufacturing industry in America and the opportunity to have my own business in this country and support my family off the fruits of my labor. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And just for the audience, this will probably come out Tuesday before Thanksgiving, because I know Thanksgiving Day you're going to be thinking turkey, or well, many of you will be. But in any case, I'm thankful for and this is going to sound corny, but I mean it. I'm thankful for the audience, the customers who we inform them about products, the vendors who come on the show and like yourself and talk about what's going on. Of course, we're kind of doing more of a casual show. We're not talking products, but the people out there who are making the engineers, the programmers, because I enjoy sitting down with different people and learning. And because of our listeners, because of our sponsors, because of our vendors, I get to do that. So it's not a glamorous life, but man, I get to meet so many great people like John. And so I just want to thank everybody listening today. You guys are just phenomenal. All the 5-star reviews we received on all different platforms. You guys are great. So let me just say right now, I'm thankful for you guys who are listening, and I truly mean it, because that's the only way I can even, approach a vendor and say, "Hey, will you come on the show?" because of you guys. If I had 0 followers, I wouldn't be able to talk to any of these vendors. So I want to thank the audience, and I want to thank you, John. People like you coming on the show, it makes my day. So I really appreciate your
My
time
pleasure.
today.
I love talking about this industry and the passion I have for it, and talking to you. I love all your ideas. You always have good ideas. I write them down afterwards. So thanks so much for having me on, Shawn. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody watching. Really appreciate you all, and have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and stay safe.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank John for taking time out of his busy schedule to come on the show and share some of his art with us. I really enjoyed looking at those old pieces from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, all about inspiration and manufacturing and industry. And I really appreciate John coming back on the show. Now, if you disagree with any of our opinions, which is perfectly expected, please feel free to use the feedback link, the talkback link, to let us know what you think, and we'll read it on a future show. And with that, I also wanted to let you know that if you did enjoy this show, please give us a like, a sub, and a share. That is the fuel that keeps us on the air. And with that, you can always get in touch with me or follow me over at automation.locals.com. And you'll also find all my training courses over at theautomationschool.com. And I want to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving week again. And I hope you have an awesome week. And I want to encourage you to stay courageous and stay fearless. And until next time, my friends, peace.